Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So one of the qualities that's very essential for making progress on the path is Saddha, faith or confidence. And it's really hard to underestimate how important this is as a factor. I've come to the conclusion from observing people over the years that it seems to be one of the, if not the most distinguishing characteristics between people who make good progress in meditation and the people who don't. When people have saddha, then they progress in their meditation. Without saddha, you really don't get very far. So it's important to understand exactly what we're talking about. Saddha is translated most commonly by faith. Some people prefer the translation confidence. I think because faith is a kind of loaded word for a lot of Westerners, and it doesn't actually imply the same sort of things as in some other religions that are very doctrinally based. Confidence is probably not a bad translation, but I always find it maybe a little weak tea for this kind of powerful quality of saddha. Saddha has been compared, well, it's compared by the Buddha in one of his metaphors or analogies is like a guide or a map through the wilderness or through the desert, having faith. And a modern analogy that I've heard is like the headlights of your car. You're driving at night. The headlights illuminate the path ahead. That part of the path you have not yet transversed. You have it illuminated by your headlights. I think the analogy of a map is a good one, is a strong one. If you want to develop this analogy a little bit, faith or saddha is only really powerful and strong when it's illuminated by wisdom and discrimination, and even more so by experience. So if you take this analogy of a map, let's say you were going on a road trip from here to Winnipeg, and you never been there before, you don't know the country at all, and you pick up a map and you're not even really sure if the map is accurate, but you've got a certain amount of trust in the map to start with, but it's not very strong. I don't know if this map is out of date, I don't know who made it, I don't know if it's accurate, but you got enough trust to start out on the road. And then as you go along, you see, well, the next thing west of Thunder Bay is Kakabeko Falls, and you pull into Kakabeko Falls and it matches what's on the map. You say, oh yeah, okay, the map's correct so far. Then as you go through all the other little stops, Chappaqua and Uppsala and Dryden, every time you see it ahead of you on the map and then you come to it in your car, you get more and more confidence in the map. It's been correct up till now. I have a stronger faith or confidence that it's going to be correct going forward. And then by the time you get to Winnipeg, you don't even need the map anymore. You have confirmed the validity of the map, so you could say you have complete faith in the map, but in another sense, you've gone beyond faith. You don't need to trust the map anymore. Now you've seen for yourself, so you can throw the map away. So this kind of illustration demonstrates the degrees of faith. The initial setting out on the path in the first place requires a certain amount of trust or faith. But it's still very nascent. It's very weak. It's just the beginning spark. But it has to be there or you wouldn't even start. And as you make progress on the path and you find that it does improve my life, it does give me a greater understanding, it does open my heart and mind, it is doing something, your faith grows stronger and stronger. It's been said, I can't recall who said it, I don't think this is actually in the suttas, although I'm not sure actually where it originates from, but I have heard it said that the Sotapanna or stream mentor has perfect faith, and the Arahant has no faith because he's beyond faith. So this is, the analogy of the map. In the Upanisa Sutta, Bhikkhu Bodhi, in his essay about this sutta, he calls it the transcendental dependent arising. It's a very significant sutta, and it deals with the stages from an ordinary person up to full enlightenment, and the states of mind in a progression of cause and effect. And it takes off from the ordinary dependent arising, the 12 nidanas of the Paticca that probably most people who have looked at it at all are most familiar with that formulation, which is entirely within the conditioned or samsaric realm. It's just an explanation of how samsara works. And it's circular, it goes around and round. But the dependent arising is a variation on that, in that from the point of suffering, there's a branch. You can either go from suffering into further ignorance and go around the cycle again, or you can branch off towards enlightenment. And the first divergence, the first step off that samsaric path is faith, Saddha. I think that's significant in a number of ways. One is what we've already mentioned, that you need that initial spark of faith to begin the journey. But also, I think, as a kind of psychological reality, if an individual is really confronted with suffering and they're overwhelmed with suffering in their life, they don't have a lot of capacity, they're overwhelmed to develop higher spiritual states, more kind of abstract states, like, someone's really going through it, tell them to contemplate voidness or paticca, they're not really going to find the capability of it. But if they can have that glimmer of faith that there is a way out of this isn't inescapable, well, that can give them that little bit of faith or confidence to move forward and out of that position they're caught in. And it's really the only way out if the mind is really overwhelmed. And then the next stage is pamoja, happiness or joy. So from faith comes joy. And this is confirmed by experience. If you look at any religious tradition that is devotional, is bhakti based, which Theravada Buddhism isn't real strong on that kind of angle of things. It's not absent, but it doesn't really emphasize it as much. But some Hindu groups and some Christian groups that really emphasize devotional practice. Because people who follow those kind of paths tend to be very joyous, even to the point of seeming blissed out. It's the devotional aspect that raises faith. So in Theravada, we do have that available as an option with chanting and altars, and some people do develop that to a great extent, and they can become very joyous doing it. And that's a way of externalizing or ritualizing the arousal of faith. But internally, faith comes up as that kind of confidence that gives one the energy and the courage to move forward. And the complementary aspect to faith is wisdom, particularly the aspect of discriminating wisdom, which is that aspect of wisdom which recognizes and understands the particularity of things. These two, faith and wisdom, are two of the faculties, the indriyas, and they're required to be developed in balance. As faith without wisdom, or wisdom without faith, is an unbalanced development, and the mind goes wrong, it goes askew. The discriminating wisdom informs faith as to what seems trustworthy to put one's faith in. We know in the world that people can believe all kinds of insane things, and if they don't have any discriminating wisdom, they can follow any kind of even self-destructive paths, like some of these religious cults in recent times that have committed suicide. Those people who go that far are not lacking in faith. They've got plenty of faith, but their faith is misdirected because it's not informed by discriminating wisdom. That people who have developed discriminating wisdom without any faith, so there's nothing to feed the heart. It's dry, and it becomes a kind of cold, cynical skepticism. People that criticize everything without ever finding anything worthwhile to put their trust in. So they're very miserable. They never get anywhere. So these two have to be balanced, the discriminating wisdom and faith. Faith is to some degree a leap into the unknown. You've got to have that bit of courage. And this is something that becomes an obstacle in meditation. If the meditation deepens enough that you're coming close to that sense of release, and you draw back because it's scary, you don't want to cross the abyss. No, you need faith to be able to do that. And faith gives one the courage to be able to do that. So the question obviously comes up, talking about faith, or Saddha, what is it that we have faith in? And what's the object or the content of faith? If we look at the Four Noble Truths of the Buddha, the first truth should be obvious from experience. an honest look at the reality of conditions in samsara, conditions in our life, should make the first truth self-evident. So faith is not really required. You don't have to take it on faith. It's right there. And if you haven't seen it yet, don't worry. It'll come and smack you around sooner or later. The second truth is maybe a little less obvious to start with, but it should be evident to the rational mind. It makes sense. You don't have to take that on faith. The first and second truth together are susceptible to rational thought. The fourth truth is verified by experience, by doing it, trying it, and seeing the results. But it's really the third truth, the truth of the release from suffering, the truth of nibbana, or the unconditioned, that initially one has to take on faith. And there's no other way to take it. The Buddha said, third noble truth, there is an end to suffering. And until one has experienced that, it's entirely a matter of faith. There's no way it can be proven or shown or rationalized. That there is nibbana, there is that which is not this. There is an alternative to samsara. If we take only the first and second truths without the third truth, then it becomes a very miserable kind of philosophy, something like existentialism or stoicism, perhaps. You recognize life is suffering and desire is the cause of suffering, and you don't go any further. Say, okay, how do we get out of this? And there are plenty of people who get that far and develop this kind of very cynical resignation. The third noble truth is the hopeful news, the promise that there is an end to suffering. There is an end to birth and death and birth. There is a way out. And this is why it was said, as I mentioned earlier, that the Sotapanna has perfect faith, because in our analogy, he's gotten to Winnipeg. Maybe, no, that's not quite right. The Arahant's the one who's got to Winnipeg, maybe, but he's got to Kenora. he's seen the, that the map is completely reliable, because the stream winner has glimpsed nibbana. So the third noble truth is no longer a matter of faith, but he has faith now. His faith is confirmed. Oh, there is a way out, but he hasn't yet seen the whole picture. He doesn't understand everything. It's not all clear. He hasn't really immersed in nibbana, so he still has a lot of work to do. But his journey is really just beginning. That's why a stream winner is also called Sikha, the learner. Because it's really the beginning of the real journey is at that point. And at that point there's no turning back. Because one has glimpsed nibbana, the unconditioned, and the faith is confirmed, and it's now solidly based on experience. I think there's one other aspect to Saddha that's very important in a practical way, and that is having confidence in oneself. And so often people say something like, oh, I don't know, I try to meditate, I just can't do it, I can't get anywhere. Or I'm I'm kind of hopeless. I've got so many defilements. There's no way I'm going to get out of this. And I think the answer to that is no. You won't get out of it with that attitude. You have to find confidence in yourself that you have the potential. You can do it. This is a problem with our culture in Western countries, and it's not so much in the East. You don't see it anywhere near to this degree. That we tend to be very self-critical. We tend to be very hard on ourselves. And it's easy to see all your flaws and faults, but it's harder to see your virtues and strengths. You can begin with just the fact, the undeniable fact that you've been born human. That signifies significant progress already in previous lifetimes, that you've reached this state of being. And then if you're born human in a time and place where you can hear and practice the Dhamma, that's even more rare and precious. And as the result, it's not a result of luck or chance, it's a result of good karma and previous progress made. So you've demonstrated already that significant degree of potential in your being. I think people generally have more potential, more spiritual potential than they give themselves credit for. That there is that possibility of awakening. One thing that you can do is to really notice and recognize and cherish those moments of illumination, those aha moments when you understand something, when the mind, even for a few brief moments, transcends the pettiness of the ordinary conditions and realizes a profounder peace. Those moments when you wander off in meditation, you lose the thread of the meditation, and then you come back, you recall and come back. Ajahn Sumedho talks about this as being, that's a moment of bodhi. That's a moment of awakening. You should recognize that. Instead of being upset with yourself for wandering off, recognize the awakening at that moment of coming back. And notice the clarity of it. Here I am, I'm back. We should certainly always be aware of our defilements and work to diminish them and get past them. We shouldn't neglect recognition of our virtues. That's one of the 40 traditional meditations in the Visuddhimagga is contemplation of virtue, of recognizing one's own virtue. So you have to have confidence in yourself that it's possible, that you have potential. One aspect of this is not to be impatient. That the process unfolds in its own time, and we can't know or really control it in that regard. There's a Zen story I heard once. I don't really know the original source of this. That a monk goes to see the master, and he asks the master, "What do you think, sir? How long till I reach full enlightenment?" And the master looks at him and says, "Well, in your case, I think 500 lifetimes." And the guy goes away all miserable and depressed. Then the second student comes and he asks the same question, and the master says, I think in your case, 500 lifetimes. And he says, oh, really? So quickly? Oh, joy, oh, wonderful. And this is something that really can help generally with your spiritual attitude, is to take the big picture. You know, you're on a journey, and you're at this point in the journey. You've got a long history behind you and an unknown history ahead of you. It's not all contained within this one lifetime. But that said, and not to diminish the truth of that, it also could be said that Nibbana is always just one moment away. We just miss Nibbana because we keep doing samsara. So just have faith and confidence in yourself that you're able to do it. And you have that potential. You have potential that will be realized more and more the more you can let go of self-limiting factors, holding yourself back with doubts and fears and anxieties and regrets. You know, and just let yourself go forward and trust that inner momentum, that inner spark of Bodhi. And have faith, and let that be like the headlights in your car.
Sadhu, sadhu.